So, unpopular opinion, I actually think sometimes renting is better than buying a place. And I wanted to kind of first start off like I'm actually at the office right now. I just wanted to kind of change the scenery a little bit. You probably have noticed that, like, my past few videos, I've been changing the scenery just to see what's working. This is not a beautiful scenery, but I wanted to try it out. So, one of the first things that I want to talk about is like why I think renting is better than buying. And this is mostly coming up because I'm seeing so many people that are trying to buy and they end up renting. My cousin's actually one of them. So if you're watching this, please watch this before you actually buy. The first thing that I generally like, just to give you some context, I'm a homeowner. I bought our home with my boyfriend, now husband, back in 2020, I think. So that's about 4 years ago. This was actually like during the pandemic. We were already looking actually a year before the pandemic, so we kind of knew what we were looking for, our budget, what specifically we were going for in terms of area or type of property, in this case condo, and what were our likes and desires and needs and all that. I had a whole sheet, and definitely check out the video here or even series in this case as to like our home buying process. Back then I think it was worth it because the purchase price was lower and our interest rate was 2.5. We did, of course, like we bought points and everything to make it even lower, but generally the interest rate is lower. However, nowadays I'm seeing that we just like one of the things that we were considering was, well, in the future when we have a family, we will probably want a 3-bedroom. We currently have a 2-bedroom 2-bath, which is great for us right now, but moving into the future, we actually were like, 3 bedrooms would be nice, because at first we thought we'll take 1 bedroom and our kids, singular or plural, we don't know, would take the other. But now we really like our home office. We really like the setup that we have. And so one of the things we were wondering is like, do we want a 3-bedroom or do we want to just stick to our current one? So in the end, we actually decided to stick with our current one just because the interest rate was unbeatable. The price was unbeatable. When I'm looking at 2 bedrooms which is a good thing because it means that our unit is appreciating, but this also means that everything else is appreciating. Prices are higher. So that's like reason number one. Prices are higher. If you were to actually calculate everything, when I say everything, I mean like the mortgage, the interest, the property tax, all the other things that you would have to pay for that you probably wouldn't pay for as a rental. So for example, if your fridge broke or your AC broke, or we had so many things break, and this building is not even old. Our building is like in the 2000s, okay? It's not even in the 1900s at this point. But the appliances, they do have an actual lifespan. So if you get like a new construction, new building and everything, then you probably have like 20 years or so, and it'll probably a little bit paced out. But unfortunately, all the plants that we had to break at one point within the past 3 years. So naturally, it was really expensive. So for example, our AC units, our HVAC units that do the AC, and they also have like steam heat that come out. Thankfully, we don't have to pay for the steam heat, really. That's part of the HOA. But for that, it was like $2,500 total per unit. We have 3 units. We've only replaced 2. That's like basically equivalent to some rent in some places. But purchase price is really high now. Like for example, the place that we're going for, the place that we actually currently have, would probably be in the millions at this point, like low millions, like 1 million probably. And our unit, we was like 815,000. So that went up 200,000. So we were thinking like, oh, if we were to, maybe we can use this and go to somewhere where we could get 3 bedrooms for maybe like a less than desirable neighborhood, but like everything that we wanted that we currently have in our current building and unit, it's unbeatable at that price and interest rate. The interest rate is like 5 to 7%. It's not worth it at this point. We would actually be hemorrhaging money if we were to do that. So we just decided to stick with our 2 bedrooms. So purchase price is 1, interest rate is 2. But you could also, like in my case, I actually think our monthly payments for our condo is like about $4,000 total. And that's like with the property tax, that's with the interest rates and mortgage. That's not including all the random little things like the $2,500 HVAC. But if you think about that, that's a lot of money, especially replacing 2 and then changing the fridge and changing it's like a microwave and a vent, as well as we also had to replace our garbage disposal, and we also had to replace our dishwasher. So there's just so many issues, okay? And at a certain point, it all adds up. So that's like something that I'm always a little bit conscious of, is like, if you're already house poor, where you're barely making it with the mortgage payments or the monthly payments, what about all these like sneaky little costs that add up. That's not going to be that great, okay? Normally the landlord builds it into the rent. So in our case, our monthly payment, just the monthly payments, is $4,000. If this was rented out, it would probably be like $4,500 to take into account of all these actual maintenance stuff that pops up because of you using the unit. In our case, that was a lot of money, but we knew this was going to happen. And I'm just specifically going to say that, like, these may be related to the market, but at the same time, you have to think about it in terms of rent. So the one reason why I actually think rent makes more sense in some places is the flexibility and how it fluctuates too, because as we all know, COVID rates were probably really low. But when it comes to something like rent, I'm seeing the rent for like a 1-bedroom go for about $3,300, $3,400 in like really good neighborhoods. And then you can go even higher than that if you go to like the best neighborhoods. $4,000 for our unit is actually average. It's not low, it's not high. So that means if you were to actually go for a neighborhood, the rent would probably be like $4,500, maybe a little bit higher. So that kind of makes up for it. So in some cases, you are paying for that premium and then you don't own the place. But if you think about it in this way, like the down payment, the higher the purchase price, the higher the down payment, of course. So naturally, you probably don't want to pay for that all the money, you know? You could actually just use that money instead in like a high yield savings account or in like your retirement or like an investment fund in general. I just don't think at this point in New York City, where we are right now with these interest rates, it's worth it, because you have the flexibility to go around places. And this is a thing that, like, I was talking to my cousin. He's single. He does not have a girlfriend. He wants to buy a place, a 1-bedroom place in Brooklyn specifically. And my message to him was, when you buy this place, and a lot of people that I know who are in that situation, and you find a girlfriend, what if that girlfriend commutes into New Jersey and now they're like, well, this place doesn't make sense for me? Or maybe you guys want to go higher and you want 2 bedrooms. And when you, in my general opinion, if you were to upgrade, that's actually going to be so much harder, because when you upgrade, exactly the same issue that we have right now. Like, maybe what you're getting right now can help a little bit, but you'd have to kind of downgrade your neighborhood or downgrade the amenities to get that 3-bedroom. So in his case, it would be a 1-bedroom, probably upgrade to a 2-bedroom. You'd have to go even further away, and his budget's already pretty low. So you'd have to go even further away just to get a 2-bedroom. And you could save more money at the end of the day if you just rented. You have to be very careful about where you rent, though, because I know people that says like, oh, I really want to rent, but I also want like I want to live in, I want a doorman, I want to have a dog park, I want to have laundry in unit, dishwasher. You really have to think about, is it really worth it? Okay, like, do you actually need all this stuff? And that's like how Ad and I have been able to make our ends meet, is really just by living below our means in a lot of ways. We're like late 20s and we want to do all these cool things, and like all our counterparts who are friends are like living this high life, but at the end of the day, you're not seeing their bank account, okay? So you don't have to go on buy and place. And a lot of the people I know who are actually trying to buy a place, they struggle to buy a place because either there's like all cash offers, or that it's so difficult because they just get outbid, and you could just go rent. Most of these people end up just renting at a really good price. And honestly, at a certain point, I actually would recommend renting over buying a place for that exact reason, unless you were to go to a further away neighborhood and you get a more expensive, you get like a more bang for your buck kind of place, some more space, more amenities, all that kind of stuff. So that's the only thing that I think would be worth buying. And we were even considering, like, what if we bought a second home? But we don't think that's worth it. You have to really think about what actually adds up. And I've actually made a video here as to what are the things that you don't really know of. And a lot of those are really like maintenance, and you have to deal with all of these complicated issues. Like, for example, what if you have a water leak upstairs and now it's affecting you? What if, and actually in our case, our AC unit caused an issue and then it leaked into the first floor, which is where the gym is. So in this case, the actual building could sue or put a claim against us because of that. Thankfully, it wasn't that much of a difference. The super was able to go up there and turn off our AC, but it's just like things like that where, yes, you may have more freedom with having a house. And I'm strictly talking about lifestyle, because if you're thinking about the investment part of it, there's a lot of other ways you can do it too. But for your personal place where you're living, I think it actually makes sense to rent in sometimes, and most times in New York City specifically. If you were to buy, on the other hand, if you were to, let's say, get a 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom and you flex out and then you just rent out the other unit, the other room in this case, I think that's actually kind of worth it if you're willing to have someone infringe in your space, or if you want to be a landlord of some sort. But not everyone wants to do that either, because what if they leave the place even worse? And I've actually seen some of my friends, like, they take videos of the places that they've toured, and it's like atrocious how they deal with it. Like, your floors are disgusting, they poke holes into your walls. And personally for me, if I was in that situation, I would feel really offended that you affected my home like that. Like, yes, they rented it out, it's their temporary home technically, but at the same time I would feel like, oh, how dare you live like this is my unit. But it's always a risk that you are going to take when you have a landlord, or when you are the landlord in this case. So yeah, that's my unpopular opinion. It's actually, no, I think it's like a popular opinion nowadays, but I think renting is more worth it now, unless you were to go somewhere farther away from where you're trying to go for and you downgrade it a little bit. Then I think it's worthwhile, especially if you're trying to use it as an investment. But as your primary home where you live in, it's going to be a lot more difficult, because if you think about it this way, you're not making any income. The most you're doing is you're building your equity at a certain point, so you could, I don't know, like take a loan out of your equity at the same time. But there's just a lot of complications in there, because of every time I'm thinking about, wow, all the things we have to pay for, and our building's not even old. Okay, sometimes it's just appliances, it's not even related to the building. There are times, however, where it's like maybe the valve is like old, like 20 years, and that's not even old, where like if you were to shut off the water, it's not actually shutting off, so you do need to change the valves, then you do need to do that. But in our short 4 years there, we still had issues. It's not even big issues either. The building itself is great. And the unit itself is great. But the actual appliances, the cost of maintaining a home, meanwhile, if you had a landlord on this case, like the landlord would just replace the appliance, or it would just never work. But like I know that my colleague does have one of those things where it's like the microwave and vent as well, just like us, but that one doesn't even work. They don't replace it. So and what they ended up doing was that they just bought a new microwave for themselves, and they don't even use that. So that's just like something that you need to keep in mind, is that if you're trying to rent, in some ways, I actually think you'd save more money. You could save that money and then buy something else, or just buy a home somewhere else, and you would just by renting your own place. So sometimes I'm thinking about, like, you know, it's great that we bought our place, because now we could do renovations. That's a video of a different day. That's actually, we're doing renovations next month. I'll be vlogging it as well. But when it comes to the actual buying the place, I think it's just so much headache to buy a place now that it's probably better to rent. However, there's so many other times where, like, maybe you do want to buy a place, maybe this is like no other time is better than the ever, then you should probably do it. But I know this is like, it's probably my real estate agent's probably like, Christine, stop saying this, I want money. But my real estate agent probably does not approve of this, but I do think that it's a difficult time to buy. Especially with how the market is right now, like real estate market and job market. Because think about it, you have to also make sure that your equity, in this case, like if you have Google equity like me, it has to perform well so that it counts as an asset for you. And you also have to have money in your bank. But like if you don't have that money in your bank, and like maybe you get laid off or all that kind of stuff, that might be an issue. So that's why I think renting is a little bit more, it's less stressful. The one big issue, however, is that, like, what if they raise the rent on you? Same thing, honestly, is like for us, they raise property taxes, they raise HOA dues. So it's not necessarily raised. I mean, sometimes they could be raising it for profit, but in some cases, like, you can think about it that way. It's like if you bought a place, you'd still have to pay for it. Even if you like paid off your mortgage entirely, you'd still have to pay for your HOA dues and your property tax. Right, let me know down below in the comments, like, how do you feel about this? Do you think renting makes sense in this today's world? I actually feel like I was rambling in today's video, but let me know down below, because I actually keep thinking about my cousin who's trying to buy a place for just himself, and I'm just thinking, like, there's some times where you probably don't want to be buying right now, but and I know a lot of people that have been trying to buy and they just end up renting instead. So yeah, let me know down below.